Welcome to Hockey Nights in Vegas, episode 71. My name is Eddie Rivkin. I'm joined as always by Chris Chapman from Fox Sports Las Vegas, and a loud welcome back, fresh from her completing her jail sentence of having to cover the Las Vegas Raiders and the Super Bowl and all things that have kept her away from us. Lindsey Brown, ladies and gentlemen, Lotus Broadcasting is back on the podcast.
Yeah, and I'm still on some sort of probation, or I'm in the in-between because now I have to watch dudes running straight lines and tell people how that's going to indicate how they're going to be good football players. So it never truly ends, but now hockey is back and I can get into my goalie stance. So thanks for giving me the time to do that, but I'm really excited to mix up with you guys once again.
This episode, as always, is brought to you by the Las Vegas Advisor, www.lasvegasadvisor.com, and by my very good friend, John Pierce at Ageless Forever, www.agelessforever.net. So let's start off episode 71 with a riddle, kids. What do the Vegas Golden Knights and my breakfast this morning have in common?
I'm almost afraid to ask what you had for breakfast this morning.
They both start later than they should.
That's probably a good answer, but the answer is they both have the consistency of lumpy oatmeal.
Dinosaur eggs?
Hey, my kid loves those dinosaur eggs.
Yeah. So the Golden Knights went through a pretty rough spot before they got on the road. They lost 3 games in a row. Didn't look particularly good in doing that. They got mollywomped by the Maple Leafs here in Las Vegas. And we said, let's go on the road. Maybe that'll get everybody together, team building, yada, 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 yada. A decent effort in Ottawa garnered them 1 point. Then the big rematch in Toronto, where they lit up the Maple Leafs 6-2, and all was well in Golden Knights land. 6
Best
goals.
Game in a minute.
It's our Golden Knights are back. The injury bug is not a bug at all. It's just a blip. Everything is wonderful. Then they go to Boston last night and they give up 3 goals in the first period. They fight back. They go behind again. They fight back. They give up the 5th goal, which was, well, let's just say it, not a very good goal to give up at that juncture of the game. 22 games to go in the season. Where are we at? What does this Golden Knights team have an identity yet, or what are we doing? Special guest Lindsey Brown, you lead.
I mean, this team is dealing with a lot. And the thing is that when you have as much disruption as they played with this year, where it's the defensive lineups and we have different scoring droughts, we're moving line combinations and all that, there's not a lot of consistency as we're talking about, but there's also not a lot of buildup of where you can kind of return to when things start to get gnarly, which is definitely what they're in right now. In terms of where they're at, compared last night's game with the Bruins versus earlier in the week with Toronto, it's night and day in terms of how they go through the entirety of the period, right? Because right now, based on their lineup, it seems like the plan is to withstand as long as we can until we get a chance. Maybe we're opportunistic and we get a goal. Like they won a lot of games that way last year. And you have to find different ways to win games. But it's concerning to me how late they start and how long it takes them to find their game. And it just seems like every team has a plan. And this is, the Bruins are a team that's been struggling just as much. They got their asses waxed on the road, and that was their first game back at home. And so you have to expect some sort of oomph, and you got to be able to match that energy or at least supersede it. And they just haven't been able to find those moments early on where they have the puck possession, where they're getting into the offensive zone. I just feel like there's a lot of one and dones. And with that, I look a lot about positional support, where bodies are and how they're supporting the puck, whether that's, ushering a puck out on a breakout out of the defensive zone or trying to break the puck in on the offensive zone. And again, not just going one and done. And so sometimes it just looks like people are skating around with their heads cut off. And I don't really understand that because there's so many veteran players on here, and it's not like this system just popped up out of nowhere, but they haven't been able to commit to the game that really got them to the promised land last year, because they haven't had the bodies to do it. And now they don't have the reps to really return to it. You're kind of starting from scratch almost every single game. And so to answer your question is, no, they don't really have an identity. Their identity is, let's try to win the game today in the right way. And most of the time they have to find it a different way entirely.
Yeah, I think their identity is along the lines of, who do we have to play today from the Henderson Silver Knights, and let's try to find a place to insert them in the lineup. Look, last night was I would say it was so many different emotions in one game, because at first you're like, oh fuck, they gave up 3 goals in the first period. This game is over. They've got no shot. Then Paul Cotter, like Paul Bunyan, chops a tree out of the air and puts the puck in the net. And all of a sudden you're like, all right, maybe they score another. And you're like, okay, well, let's see where we're at. They get the second goal. And all of a sudden you're like, you know what? They're going to make a game of this. The shitty thing is they played a bad first period, and they paid for it. They played a much better second and third period, but they gave up a soft goal at the end of the game on a power play goal, right? Sheldon Rempel gets called for a trip, and that's the game.
After he gets tripped.
Yes. But the shitty thing about that game is it kind of felt like they at least deserved a point for fighting back and pushing it. They get a shorthanded goal in the process. Chandler Stevenson off to the races. It was a weird game. Adin Hill, not very good again. Although the funny thing is, he was really good early on when the team didn't really have any jump. And then as the game went on, the team found their game, but it's almost like Adin Hill lost his. It's frustrating because you need Adin Hill to be better, especially considering you've got 4 guys. And look, I'm going to put it out there. Brendan Brisson's playing pretty solidly. Like every game that progresses, it seems like he knows where he needs to be. He's not getting lost out there. He's in the right spots. I mean, the puck's not going in the net for him, but he seems to be getting better every game. Mason Morelli, I think.
And he'll look beautiful in those Penguins colors next week.
Oh, Eddie!
Okay, sorry, Chef. Didn't mean to.
The
we'll
showcase.
Get to that later.
But like Lindsey said, their identity is they really don't have one. Like it's pretty much what she said. Let's go out there and try to be opportunistic, but we don't really have any foundation. We have zero structure at the start of a game. We seem to lose that structure at certain points in the game, and they're paying the price for it. And I think, you know, you've got these 4 guys from Henderson, and I think they're all playing hard. They're playing their asses off. Mm-hmm. You know, it's hard to pin anything on them. Yeah. But I think the problem is you miss Jack Eichel, you miss William Carrier, and something that I feel like we're not really talking about enough, because we certainly pumped the tires of Nick Waugh when he was playing at the top line. But the foundation of this team is Nick Waugh at center, William Carrier on the wing, Keegan Colasar on the wing. It's the best 4th line in hockey. And to not be able to have that, you're asking guys to play up in the lineup, maybe positions they're not comfortable with or not ready for. You know, Keegan Colasar, he's built his game on being that 4th line guy. It's not that he's not playing well where you're putting him in the lineup. It's just that when you break that line up and you don't have the consistency of those 3 guys night in, night out, it affects other spots on the team, and the team is suffering for it.
I think it's sort of like a traveling bug. So for 35 some games, we had no Shea Theodore. We had tons of injuries on the back end. The goaltending was stellar, and the forwards were holding up. Now we have all 6, and you know Shea Theodore has been terrible since he got back. But we'll talk about funny, stupid things that people say online in a later segment. But the 6D that we expected to go to the dance to are now there, and they've been there for 3 or 4 games. But you've got the kids on the fourth line up front. And listen, the kids have done an admirable job. They haven't given up too many goals 5-on-5. They've sort of held their own. I think it's a testament to Ryan Craig on how well he teaches the system down in Henderson, that none of the kids that have been brought up front, D, and even you could say Yuri Patera in goal, none of them have not looked like they belong on the Golden Knights, maybe at some point in their career. But now the D is set. The forward lines are just a mess. Like you said, Keegan Colasar, we love his effort and everything like that, but he's not to be a second or third line guy. He is what he is, and that's his identity, and that's great. The big concern as we sort of move the topic is the goaltending was like Jennings Award conversation with Logan Thompson and Adin Hill, and all of a sudden the goaltending is not nearly
the goalies.
It's not what it was. And I don't know if you want to say it's a regression or it's probably because of the same thing that made them so good, is that they're not playing as good defensively. When they were playing fantastic, we say, oh, it's a Bruce Cassidy system and their structure, and they keep low danger shots down and they keep all that stuff. Well, that's sort of, I don't want to say crumbled because that's really super dramatic, but they're not as sound structurally defensively as a 5-man unit as we would normally expect them to be. So that's part of it. But goalie extraordinaire, Lindsey Brown.
We have no friends.
How much of this is the inconsistent play of Logan Thompson and Adin Hill?
I mean, there's the great thing about hockey is that there's plenty of blame to go around. And it gets pinned on the goalies a lot because they're the last line of defense. They're the most immediate person off into the puck when it's going past that goal line. But I'm really pumping the brakes on just putting the lion's share of the blame there, because I genuinely don't think the Golden Knights are that hard to play against right now. And it's kind of how we were talking with all this lineup changes where you don't have that same physical presence. It's one thing to have an energy line in the fourth line. It's another thing to have an energy line that's a physical energy line. And that's been broken up. But in terms of how this team is playing defensively and what has been asked of the defensemen to kind of help this team weather the storm as they've gone through these injuries, these lulls, these breaks, the December that it was when it seemed like they were on the road the whole time, is that defensemen have probably stolen more money out of goalies' pockets than any goals against that they've given up. Like, just if you think about what we asked defensemen to do today and what we asked what the Golden Knights defensemen to do, is they block a lot of pucks, don't they? Like, that's kind of the core tenet of what they are. This is what the strength of the team is supposed to be. And without that consistency, there's so much that goes on the shoulders of the players that have been in the lineup the whole year. But I always talk about Alex Pietrangelo because he is the guy that is out there for the big minutes, for all the special teams, with 30 seconds left, when you have a goal ahead or you're a goal behind. He is always out there. And he is such a skilled player that he has the capacity to do everything. And when he tries to do everything, I'm not saying it's a constant, like, I'm going to rush the puck up, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But it changes the dynamic of the other 6, whether it's the full 6 or not. Because if I'm having maybe 1 or 2 more plays that Petro's jumping up in, what does that mean for his partner, right? That usually means you have to make different decisions, and that's fine. We're used to it. But what that also does is that means Alex has to get back. And he's not getting back at the same times that he usually is because he's having to rush so much. I get that he's a superhuman, but he's also a human. And there's only so much energy that you can have. And so that's creating different shot opportunities, different shot angles. The defensemen aren't getting their gaps as tight as they should. So a lot of times on these rush chances where they're mid-range shots, high slots, the defensemen are acting as their own screen to the netminders. And I don't know if you've noticed, our netminders are really good at pucks that are in tight and pucks that are really out far away. The mid-rangers are going to give them trouble, no matter who it is, if it's Adin Hill or Logan Thompson. But that's where, when you have to make different decisions, when you have to play a different way, when you're not integrated structurally, if you're getting buzzed in your defensive zone and you're having to overcommit bodies, and again, opening up different passing lanes, different shots that aren't necessarily winners for the style that you're trying to play, I think that's where you get it. And I think Adin Hill specifically, you know, he was out for a while, and it takes a minute to get that rhythm back into your body, where you have a game by game thing where I can rely on, I know what this is going to be. I know how I move. I know how I track the pucks. And you can just tell that it's not clicking every single night, every single 10 minutes, every single rush. And so that's just where the disarray in front for me as a goalie, again, probably displacing more blame than I should, but so much of it has to do with how the team plays in front of them, and the comparison that we have to last year, where it was so much more structurally sound. Everybody was minding their P's and Q's. But this is also a team that took a really long time to figure out its identity last year too. But this is the time where it needs to be locking in. And now you lose Mark Stone for the rest of the regular season, potentially. It's like, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like they can catch a lot of breaks right now.
Chap, before you start, Lindsey, has he lost his confidence?
Adin?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't don't read that in his body language. I think he might be straining. I think there's an element when you're a goalie that's different than everybody else, because you're always like attack, pursue. You have to let the play come to you. Like that's the whole thing. Let the puck come to you, because if you try to react quicker, you're going to cause more problems for yourself than solutions. And so I think he's straining for solutions, because he knows that this team needs to get on track. And a lot of that has to do with his consistency and making up for some of the shortcomings that this team is experiencing. And it's just, they're not getting enough of those saves that they need in those moments, but that doesn't always fall on Adin and his confidence.
So is that a thing of him trying to do too much?
Yes and no. It's a daily battle, honestly. Like, this is the mental part of goaltending, and this is where like the true grind comes in, where you're going through your same routines, you're showing up, you're being extra focused on the minutia, glove here, blocker here, I'm gonna move the stick, rebound, recover. Like, there's so much process and practice, and it's like a spirituality thing. At least that's how I look at it. And you have to trust it, even if the results aren't happening. Because this isn't a time where it's like, well, Adin, let's try moving your glove in a little bit closer, and we're gonna have you gap out a little bit. This is middle of the season. Like, this isn't time to make those adjustments. And so you're trying to find that perfect balance and keeping yourself on an even keel to not get too worked up, where all of a sudden I lose confidence. What I'm doing, it's not working. It will, because it has, and it's not all on you. Everybody else has their own process that they're working together towards too. And the other thing is too, the worst case scenario, and I know this is gonna shock everyone, the worst case scenario is you don't figure it out, and then there's an off season, and then there's another hockey season, right? There's a like
cycle
a
of life.
Correct. And not every year shit's gonna get figured out, and not every year you're gonna find the saves that you need, but you are dedicated to that process wholeheartedly. And that's one thing I won't question about anybody on this team, is their commitment to try to find the answer and try to be the answer. It just, sometimes the music doesn't play the way you want.
Sometimes you have to listen to emo, you know.
Fall Out Boy with emo Jimmy Butler. Did you see that music video?
No idea what the hell you're talking about.
Okay. Do you remember emo Jimmy Butler on media days for NBA media days? He always dresses up in a costume, right? And this year, emo Jimmy, he like relaxed his hair, he got piercings. And so Fall Out Boy put him in their most recent music video. It's about like some emo thing. And so they have emo Jimmy in the music video. It's brilliant. It's a great thing.
What have I done?
It's a great thing.
You opened it up, man.
God. Chap, what do you have anything on the goaltending?
No, look, I mean, clearly I don't know it nearly as well as you know, our Lindsey here, who played the position at a very high level. So like I'm intrigued listening, you know, like it's been frustrating, you know, for someone who doesn't know the position, like me. It's frustrating to watch the inconsistencies night in, night out. Like I think I made the comment to you when Adin got pulled against the Maple Leafs about a week ago. I said to you, oh, maybe Logan Thompson has an opportunity to come in here and kind of,
make his play.
Yeah, give Bruce something to think about. And he didn't play well in that game either. So to Logan's credit, he did play much better against Ottawa, a game that, you know what, he played a great game. He was just outplayed by the guy on the other side. And that happens sometimes. I thought Forsberg played a phenomenal game. But, it's just the inconsistency in that position. And I think it's very easy to blame the goaltender, right? Like, oh my God, I can't believe, he let that goal in. And look, sometimes like the goal, the fifth goal he let in last night, you're like, come on, but if you go back and watch that game, there's saves that Adin Hill made early on in that first period that kind of prevented the game from getting out of hand really early.
Oh, they could have got a snowman hung on him easy last night.
Yeah. So
easy. Snowman is 8 for you people that don't know. Snowman.
Yeah.
5 on the bottom.
I like how you go 5 and 3. I'm a 4 and 4 girl, but
okay.
Yeah. 4 and 4. I can't figure out how to do it in the, I don't know, fucking camera. But it's easy to sit here and say, oh, it's Adin's fault. And the thing is, it's not, they win as a team, they lose as a team. And 95% of the time that we've been covering this team with Adin Hill and Logan Thompson on that bench or in net, we've never said, oh, this game's on Adin or this game's on Logan. Like, they have played better a lot more than they've played like shit. And that's why, you could be a little frustrated and flustered and like, oh my God, what's going on? But you have to be confident that these two guys are going to get it figured out because they've done it in the past.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's it's that time of the year where we start the scoreboard watch. 22 games left for the Vegas Golden Knights. Every night there's something that affects the Golden Knights playoff, the Western Conference playoffs. The Golden Knights, according to my little card here, are 33 wins, 20 losses, 7 losses in overtime. They have 73 points. They are second in the Pacific Division, 10 points behind the Vancouver Canucks, 1 point ahead of the Edmonton Oilers, who have 2 games in hand. However, and this is where things get fun, Vancouver has been awful since the All-Star break. And their coach, who's always good for a quote, said they have to learn how to play when the games get harder. And they have a bit of a cupcake because they get the Ducks next. But then they have a bit of a gauntlet. They go into LA. They come visit us, the Golden Knights, on Thursday the 7th. And then they're off to Winnipeg and Colorado. Ooh. So I will ask you this, esteemed colleagues. Is the race for the Pacific Division over, or are we getting ready to have a really entertaining last 10 to 15 games? Lindsay?
The Pacific Division is never over. We've learned that over the last couple of years. And the thing is, it's just going to look different from last year. Because remember, the Golden Knights were killing it, but everybody wanted to talk about how good the Kings were, how good the Oilers were, because they were running too. Like, everybody was running really hot. And that might still happen, but this hockey season feels different than it does from last year, not just from a Golden Knights standpoint, but for the other teams. But honestly, Tockett's right. Like, I don't really take Vancouver that serious right now. And you know what? They might make the playoffs like that. And I would expect them to make the playoffs because you win the division, you make the playoffs. But they don't really know yet, like, what it takes to play when the dog days are done and all of a sudden everybody's scratching and clawing, like you said, for positioning, for just inclusion, and how those dynamics change. And then we know that they will change again once the playoffs get here. And so I'm very curious to see how that goes. And Thatcher Demko, as much as I love him, very streaky, very streaky. He can be amazing. But just as we were talking about, the netminders for the Vegas Golden Knights are only as good as the players that are playing in front of you. And if they're not doing the right things, if they're not staying true to the defensive habits that have sustained them as long as they have, I don't care who you are. If you're being asked to go backdoor, butterfly slide, just all out yard sale 5 times a game, it's a fair percentage to concede probably 3 of those, right? And so if you're and that's just one particular situation or shot that I think gets created as players who are either running around inexperienced or gassed as they get out of position. Edmonton, I don't believe in anything they do until we get to playoffs with their goaltending situation, and I don't know how they're going to approach that either. Like, goalie, for all the talk that there has been since the Golden Knights have won the Stanley Cup, that goalies don't matter. The thing that is going to decide all this are goalies, and those that have ones that can find their game if they haven't already, or ones that can kind of shepherd them through and be able to stabilize, because I just don't think there's a lot of stability in this division this year. And just at the goaltending position, a lot of the assumed starters have not played up to what is expected of them. But that's goaltending. It's streaky year to year, period to period. That's the ultimate pursuit, is trying to be as close to the same and making the same save the same way every time. So,
Chap, what's going on in the Pacific?
Well, I'm going to make a bold statement here. It's over for the Golden Knights. They're not going to catch the Vancouver Canucks, nor do I think they give a shit if they catch the Vancouver Canucks. The next 22 games, I think the Golden Knights are going to focus on finding their game, getting healthy, because ultimately winning the division doesn't mean anything to this team. It's winning rounds in the playoffs that ultimately matter to this team. If you're the Vancouver Canucks and you win the Pacific Division, you get to hang a nice banner, and then you're going to get your ass kicked by the LA Kings in the first round of the playoffs. That's what it boils down to. There's a difference in philosophies, a difference in mindset, and a difference in experience. And Rick Tocchet touched on the experience. Golden Knights have won multiple Pacific divisions. They've won the Western Conference twice. They've won a Stanley Cup. Nobody else in the Pacific Division outside of a handful of players on the LA Kings can say that. This team isn't a regular season team. They don't care about the regular season. For Edmonton, you know what? If they want to go guns a-blazing and trying to catch the Vancouver Canucks, go right ahead and wear yourselves down trying to do that. Lindsey touched on it. The goaltending. I do think that Thatcher Demko is probably, of the four teams, I think he's probably the best goalie.
When he's on.
The problem is,
this year.
Yeah, but the problem is Thatcher Demko, much like Adin Hill, is only as good as the guys in front of him on any given night. If the Vancouver Canucks are bad, there's a good chance Thatcher Demko is not going to be able to save them if the whole team is bad. I don't think it really matters to the Golden Knights. I think for Edmonton, maybe for their psyche, they want to go win the division. Go right ahead. Go right ahead and catch Vancouver. And we know when push comes to shove that Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard are not seasoned playoff goalies. I just don't know if I trust them. I trust them in the regular season because you've got Connor.
Skinner's a seasoned goalie. He's overcooked and burnt.
Yeah. He's just not a good playoff performer. He's just not a good playoff goalie.
Yeah,
so far.
You know, he's got plenty of seasoning. He just stinks in the postseason.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, look, small sample size, but you know, I just think for Vegas, I don't really think it matters. I think what matters is they have the number that ultimately matters to me is 10, and that's a 10-point lead on Calgary and St. Louis for that last playoff spot. As long as Calgary and St. Louis don't make a run at you, I don't really think the Golden Knights care if they end up playing Winnipeg or if they end up playing Vancouver or Edmonton. I don't really think it matters. What matters to this team is being healthy and having your game prepared, locked in, and ready to go come April, whatever it is, 21st or whenever that first game of the playoffs is going to be.
I am going to make a prediction.
Ooh.
I'm feeling it. I don't know where my background went, but I would like to put one of those Swami hats on like Johnny Carson wore. But nobody's going to get that reference.
I get it.
Okay, here's what's going to happen. You ready? Edmonton's going to win the division. The Vegas Golden Knights are going to beat Vancouver in the first round. Edmonton is going to beat the LA Kings in the first round. And that matchup that everybody wanted to see in the first round is really going to happen in the second round.
Which is probably where it should happen.
Which, yeah, you don't want one of the premier teams, and you probably don't want the defending Stanley Cup champion out in the first round if you can avoid it. So that's the prediction. Edmonton continues balls to the wall. They do their best Boston Bruin impression, and they run the table and they win the division. And Vancouver regresses to a team that hasn't played a whole bunch of hard games. They get into the playoffs. It doesn't matter if the Vegas Golden Knights finish second or third. They're just as soon go to Vancouver as host them. That's not a relevant thing. But the Donnybrook, the bailiwick, the all-in is the second round, Edmonton and the Vegas Golden Knights. And again, I don't think home ice advantage really means that much to the Golden Knights in that series either, because they proved last year that Draisaitl and McDavid can score 5,864 goals, and they can be on the golf course a month before the Golden Knights. So that's my Pacific Division. That's how I see it coming down the pipe. And again, as both of you said, I don't think the Golden Knights give a big fat rat's ass.
Why would you? You got more than enough to worry about in finding your own game versus finding another T-shirt that says division champions. Like, we got bigger shit to worry about.
Okay. Speaking of bigger shit to worry about, today is Friday, March the 1st. It's a little bit after 1:30, which means it's 4:30 in the Eastern time zone, which means that the trade deadline is now less than a week away. There have been numerous reports by people who are doctors or people who say they're doctors or people who play doctors on TV that have said that Captainmark Stone is out for the remainder of the regular season and TBD for the playoffs. The non-confirmed rumor that seems to be just the truth is it's a ruptured spleen. According to WebMD, the recovery time is 3 to 8 weeks, depending on the severity of the rupture and the tear and things like that. The treatment is basically rest. No heavy lifting, not much physical activity until the doctor says you're okay. Who gives a shit about that? Let's talk about the fun stuff. The Max got $8.5 or $9 million of cap space a week before the trade deadline, and everybody in the NHL thinks Vegas is a fucking cheater because they're about to trade for who goes first? Because they're trading.
Oh yeah,
right?
True.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
The gates are open. The phones are blazing. So what are they going to do, Lindsey Brown, with all that dough?
God, you're gonna ask me first. I mean,
Oh,
you're gonna go to the top of the market, right? You're gonna go look and see and find a winger, unless it depends, because like Eichel skating without a red jersey, right? Did I see that tweet yesterday that he's out and about?
Yes.
That's where it's like,
And today he was in a gray jersey,
which is fantastic. And I know that this organization is flush with centers, and then you have kind of a tweener center with Nick Waugh, who can also play wing, and same with Stevenson. And so that's where it's like, do you want to get another tweener? Do you want to have somebody that can kind of go both ways? But otherwise, you could go with that straight winger. And everybody's going to talk about the Gensel, which is, I think, a great idea because you know where he's from, at least where his family's from.
Pittsburgh?
His dad, no, his dad was
Omaha. He's from Omaha, isn't he?
I know. But his dad was such a good hockey coach because he was from Minnesota. We had to move the family to Omaha because they needed help, and we had to export our greatness. That's what we do. And so he's a guy that's been beat up this season, but we know that he can produce with high level players. I mean, he's one of the big reasons why the Pittsburgh Penguins were more than just one championship with that big core. And then I also look a little bit at like Vladimir Tarasenko. There's something about Vlad and this team where I kind of want somebody who doesn't skate as hard, because sometimes I feel like they skate too much. Like there's too much of an emphasis on a rush. So I kind of want somebody who's a little more methodical in how they go about their business. Vlad plays at his own speed. He's a sniper and a half. He's a great guy in the offensive zone. But it just depends on what you truly value with this squad, because I don't think you need to add like any more skating. Like everybody can skate. There's not a lack of speed or anything else. But in terms of like lack of manipulation, that's what I'm looking for. I want somebody that can stop and go, that can manipulate gaps. And he could be a great option on a power play too if you need to switch that up or maybe add something to get that going, because we know that's about as consistent as anything else, and it's always has been. And so those are kind of the names that I look at if you're not looking to go goaltending. And even then, I feel better putting trust in the netminders that are here to figure it out rather than bring somebody in for either a Band-Aid or like Markstrom, whose contract is massive. I don't know how many years he has left on it, but you'd probably have to find somebody to tango for that. And I don't know how many teams are going to be like, let's help the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah. So Jacob Markstrom has 2 years at $6 million remaining on his contract. He also has a no movement clause. So
yeah,
I'm guessing he would probably waive that. But
I don't think
nobody wants to come to nobody wants to come to Vegas from Calgary in February. No.
So they're going to trade him. I think he was saying, there's a quote from him earlier today about how he doesn't like how the top is handling his trade process. And so they might be saying, this is the price, this is what it needs to be, and if you're not willing to meet it, we're not going to move it. And he wants to go.
Well, it sounds like he was on. It sounded like he was on his way to New Jersey, and he waived that no movement clause. And at the last minute, the deal kind of fell apart. I don't know the specifics of what caused it to fall apart or what was involved or who was involved, but nonetheless, Calgary has already sold a couple players. Noah Hannafin, another guy who probably will be
gone.
Yeah. So, but I don't think Vegas is going to be in the market for Noah Hannafin. I mean, it just seems like I mean, look, could he come here and be a star player for a cup run? Absolutely. But you'd be breaking up your decor, and I don't know who you play him with. I mean, I would imagine maybe McNabb. I don't know. But the two names, because now you know that you're going to have that bundle of cash. So I'm going to start with Alexander Wenberg. He's a center. He's defensively responsible, doesn't put up a ton of points, but you don't really need him to do that. He's a guy you can come in, bring him in. He could play wherever you need him to play. Obviously, his relationship with William Karlsson is, I mean, it's not the most important thing, but we know based on the fact that they went to Alex Pietrangelo last year and talked to him about Barbashev. I mean, I could realistically see them doing the same as with Lindsey's guy, Tarasenko. I mean, Barbashev and Pietrangelo won a cup with Tarasenko in St. Louis. So, but I think Wenberg is a good place to start. It gives you center depth, much in the same way Teddy Bluger did last year. I mean, I think you could fill him in anywhere from the second line down and be okay. And then I'm gonna throw Frank Vetrano in the mix. He's got another year left on his deal after this one. He plays the wing. He plays for an awful team in the Ducks. And he's a guy who's put up some really big numbers for the Anaheim Ducks, despite the fact that he doesn't really have a ton of help. I think Seattle is going to look to move a couple of guys. You know, they're not going to make the playoffs. They've regressed, and they've got some big contracts so they can knock off the books and start fresh next year with the free agent class. I also think another name, and I don't know if it's as sexy as Frank Vetrano, but Adam Henrique, to me, would be a guy who you could bring in here. He's a veteran player. He's only played in that one Stanley Cup, which he did with the Devils way back when they got smoked by the LA Kings.
2012, baby.
Yeah, well, I kind of brush that out of my memory if I can. But that's a guy who's a veteran player. He's probably maybe has another year or two left in the league before, you know, Father Time comes calling for him. Maybe not. I mean, we've seen guys play until 40, but he's 30. I think he's 34, but he's a guy who could come in and be very responsible for you, and a guy who could, if you've got to play kids, He's another guy who you could put out there. Like, there's no reason why you couldn't put him on the fourth line and have him play with Morelli and Rempel if need be. So I think what's going to happen is they're obviously going to do something. What it hinges on to me is what they know, because certainly they know a lot more than we do about the status of Mark Stone. I think they have an idea if he's going to be back for the playoffs or not. We may not get gist of it, and those who have the connections may not get the gist of it. I think the report I saw was he was questionable for the playoffs, but they're not going to sit on their hands and do nothing. This is a team that knows they have a window. This is a team that is hungry to repeat, and they want to etch their place in history. Like, repeating kind of raises you above a lot of other teams in this league. And the other thing is, it puts you on the doorstep of dynasty. You know, and I know we're getting way ahead of ourselves, but these two guys in McPhee and McCrimmon, they always do something because all they give a fuck about is winning. It's all they care about. And they've done a really damn good job. So I put a few names out there. What that means is don't expect any of these guys to be traded to Vegas. But, you know, I think they're going to do something. I think they're going to do something big.
Here's what we know. And here, before we get to what we know, here's the name you missed. Buchnevich in St. Louis. Yeah. Big, strong, sturdy winger, responsible, adds a little bit of grit, but can score on a reasonable deal. Here's the things we know. The Golden Knights don't care about their first round picks. They have first and second and third round picks in the next 3 drafts. We know that Pittsburgh has 4 guys in their late 30s, and this is the end of the road for them pretty much. Gensel is 29. He's due for a huge raise next year, probably $8.5-9 million, right? Somewhere in that, below McDavid and Matthews, but in the upper tier of forwards in the NHL. Pittsburgh is going to ask for Brendan Brisson and probably a first to get Gensel. Now, the cap's going up $4 million next year. We have Carrier, we have Marchessault, we have Martinez. So Gensel is most likely a straight rental. One shot, hit the home run, go for it right now. If it doesn't work out, somebody else is going to pay him $9 million next year. It ain't going to be the Vegas Golden Knights because they're just that. As good as their salary cap gymnastics are, they're not that good. Mm-hmm. But if you look at Buchnevich and a guy like Jordan Eberle in Seattle, right? There's a couple guys in Philly that might fit the bill. I agree with you about Vetrano and about Enrique, but I feel like this late in the season, that interdivision stuff might not go as easily, as smoothly as the Calgary-Vancouver deals that have gone. And, that first Calgary-Vancouver deal, the kid scored 2 goals in Vancouver the first game, and now he's almost a healthy scratch. I mean, that trade has turned out to be not great for Vancouver just yet. I still think, I just feel like they're going to make a play for the shiny object.
They always do.
And if they can get away from maybe, I don't know what the pecking order is, if it's Brisson, Dorofeyev, Miramanov, I don't know what the pecking order at the top of the tree is, right?
Or could be Cormier.
It could be Lucas Cormier.
Oh, please no. I love him.
Just because he's handsome. But anyway.
No. Yeah, that's why I like him. Have you met me?
Yeah, I haven't seen you in a while, but yes, I've met you.
He is a good-looking guy, to be fair.
I mean,
I
feel like it's going to be okay for the Golden Knights to give up it's going to definitely take a first in something. And if they can do it and it's a first, Dorofeyev, and a second in 2 years down the road or something like that, we know that they're in win now. We know they don't give one rat's ass about the 24-25 season, right? They'll deal with that when they have to deal with. These are just facts that we know about the Golden Knights because we talk about them, every day or every week. I think it's Jake Gensel, and then I think it's a secondary, multi-purpose bluegery forward, defensively responsible, second, third line fill-in guy.
So not Jason Zucker.
Yeah,
Got it.
and then if you want to talk about a guy who's a sniper and good on the power play and doesn't skate a lot and is available, Phil Kessel.
No.
Phil, the great locker room talent, Phil the Thrill Kessel.
Could you imagine that? That would be fucking wild.
That would be the greatest redemption story. He doesn't play a game in the regular season. He comes in, he plays one game in the playoffs. They win the cup again. He gets his name on the cup, and he's the greatest American player in the history of the game.
The golden
Phil
ace.
Kessel, ladies and gentlemen.
The golden ace. It's not a black ace. He's a golden ace. I do want to bring up one name because, in terms of you want somebody that's hard to play against, right? Is that what we're placing we want a goal scorer, but in terms of like a secondary player that's probably going to come cheap, that's hard to play against. There's a player called Brandon Duhaime that plays for Minnesota who I have loved watching him develop. He's kind of one of those that wasn't supposed to turn out to be anything, but he is a mean man. When they were playing in that playoff series a couple years ago during the pandemic, I'll never forget that there was an opening face up and like Marshy was out there because obviously, and what they both went and chased the puck like in between the benches, where the stanchion is, and Duhaime laid his ass out. And Marshy's not a big guy, but he's also a human thumb. And so like it's hard to push him over. And he plays such a hard physical style. He works his ass off. He can net goals here and there. Like he's not a complete minus if he's in the offensive zone. And he's really, really cheap. He's at like 0.08 or 0.8 million for his contract. I think he's an unrestricted free agent after this year. Like if you want a snarly guy who can fly a little bit and I think would fall in line pretty quickly with a good defensive structure, he's a cheaper that I would really like them to take a knock on.
And after Minnesota got their ass handed to them last night, 6-1 by Nashville, I bet Billy Guerin's phone lines are wide open to have those sorts of conversations.
Nashville is literally ruining their future right now.
Wrecking them.
They do it every year.
Ruining their future. I know. And then like the fact that it's wild to me that they were even considering moving UC Saros, but I also understand it in terms of like reclaiming capital, finding it, resetting the timing of that team in terms of when they're supposed to blossom. But now they're winning so many games at the wrong time, and that they're not going to sell out because Barry Trotz doesn't seem like a guy that's going to give up on a team, because there's something to be said about making those trades while the team is winning and not giving them a shot, right? I want to give him a shot. And so he's going to give them that shot. And so they've
earned it.
I know, exactly that. And so that's where they've earned it, but also it's at the expense of setting themselves up really well for the future. But I'm sure Barry will figure it out because that's an off-season problem.
Okay, last topic of the day. Speaking of true negatives, as far as plus minus and stuff like that, our dear friend Ryan Reeves pumped up his stats really big against the Golden Knights in 2 games. He added a goal and an assist, doubling his goal total to 2, pounding up his assist total to 3. But that's not why I want to talk about Ryan Reeves. I want to talk about Ryan Reeves because the hot take of the week is tomorrow night, the Toronto Maple Leafs head into Madison Square Garden to play the New York Rangers. And there's a kid on the New York Rangers that's about 6'17" and weighs about 280 million pounds. His name is Eric Rempe. And kids, if you don't know who this guy is, he got into a fight 4 seconds into his NHL career at the outdoor game against the Islanders. And that's only because the official timer didn't stop it after 1 second. They dropped the puck. He went at. This guy is a load. He is a wagon. But he's young. He's already had 4 fights, I think, in the NHL. He got his ass kicked by Olivier in Columbus, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But tomorrow night could be some must-see hockey viewing, aside from the Golden Knights game, because you have the new up-and-coming threat to the heavyweight throne. I mean, this Rempe kid, he's fought Delorier,
Matt Martin,
Olivier in Columbus. But tomorrow, and I don't think you can play 18 games and still be the reigning and defending heavyweight champion in the world, unless you're Roman Reigns. But certainly one of the former heavyweight champions of the NHL is going to get his first visit with Mr. Rempe tomorrow night.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to think that they're going to talk during, well, let's go back. If they put Ryan Reeves in the lineup, because that's a huge if, you would have to think that that's going to be an invitation that's going to be accepted. So,
well,
if Rempe asks for it, I don't think Revo is going to instigate it.
No. Revo's like, who are you, kid?
No. Ryan Reeves knows who he is. In fact, I've got Reeves' quote about it. And his quote was, "It's been a hot start for him, a good start. Good on him. He's got some attention, and we'll see how long it lasts." Asked if there'll be a fight tomorrow, he says, "I don't have the game script, but you never know."
Game script. I love that.
Revo's also aware that he has fought like 4 times in the last like 6 days or how many games. Like that's the thing is like if Rempe wants it, I think they'll go. But I don't think Revo is going to instigate.
I don't think he's going to seek him out.
Nah.
Like I love the story. I think it's great that he's finding a way to make his way into the NHL. It's hard. It's very conflicting to me just seeing him hit and get hit. And I get it. That's his body, his choice. Some of us get that choice and that's his. And it's just, it's hard to watch sometimes. And so I just hope that he is being given more than a chance besides just to be the guy that's there to dust it up. And I believe that's happening, but I just don't want that expectation for himself to seep in where it's like, this is what I have to do, you know? But I don't know.
Well,
you're 6'8". Nobody's out there you're not out there for your hands, dude. So I don't know.
So that's a really valid point. We've got about 2 minutes. There is a lot of talk that New York is not doing enough to protect the young man because he's a young guy.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are other people who saying, listen, kid, good on you. You're doing what they brought you up to do.
Mm-hmm.
The league has gotten significantly softer over the last 10, 15, 20 years. The true enforcer role, I think we would all agree, is basically sort of null and void.
Yeah. I think it started to die the day Marty McSorley decided to whack someone with his stick.
Yeah, that could probably be true. But are we too soft? Should we let the kid just play, or do we need to take the new, younger view of life and violence and say that Peter Laviolette needs to take the kid aside and say, okay, kid, we understand you can throw him a little bit, but it's not necessary every single game.
Well, what I see the negative aspect of this is he's getting slammed during these fights. And I worry more about his head hitting the ice than a few punches to a helmet. Look, it's a tough decision because I'm not an anti-fighting guy. It's a violent game. And you know what? Sometimes guys take liberties. And if you take fighting out of the game, liberties are going to be exponentially higher.
It's a necessity. It's a necessity.
So,
I don't disagree.
You know, I'm not one of those people who says don't fight because like I feel like you need to have it in the game just because of how the game is played. I mean, if you take fighting out, you may as well take out checking and everything else. So I don't have an issue with it personally. I wanted to be a little more careful, but you know, it's his game. And if that's your game and that's how you're going to stick in the league, you know what? That's his right. That's his right. And, you know, if he wants to be an NHL player and that's the only way he's going to be an NHL player, then you got to go out there and do your job. And I don't think the onus is on the Rangers to overprotect him. And I don't feel like the onus is on other players to not go as heavy on him because he's only 21. If you want to fight.
Lindsey, last word.
I'm conflicted. I hope that he's able to get a couple scores, stick that guy in front of the net, and have him be the biggest screen of all time, and just score off his butt. And then like he won't have to fight anymore because we'll just score off his butt. It's fine. That's my thought.
Welcome. Okay, welcome back, Phil Kessel. Phil Kessel, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome
Phil
back,
the Thrill.
Kessel. All right, episode 71's in the book. Hockey Nights in Vegas, brought to you as always by the Las Vegas Advisor, www.lasvegasadvisor.com, by my good friend John Pierce at Ageless Forever, www.agelessforever.net. 20 games to go in the season, 22 games to go in the season, kids. We're going to up the content level. We're going to talk to you once more for sure before the trade line because we've all said some outlandish things, and we can't wait to see what the Macs actually do with all that dough. We do wish Captain Mark Stone a speedy recovery, and to the surprise of no one, he has already been announced as a Game 1 starter in the playoffs. Just kidding, folks. Everybody hates Vegas. So that's it. Episode 71's in the books. We are out of here. See ya.